Poor girl texted the Millionaire CEO by mistake. So, why did he show up with milk at her door? Please, just $50, 0 cents for formula. I'll pay you back. Her hands were shaking when she hit send. Then she saw it. Wrong number. Her heart dropped. Her baby was still crying. And the message had already been read. What she didn't know was this. The man who read it was a billionaire CEO, and she was mopping his office floors just 2 floors below. Sarah sat on the floor with her knees pulled tight to her chest, listening to the sound that broke her in half. Her baby's cry, weak, dry, endless. She looked at the empty bottle, then the empty shelf, and the envelope of bills she had already opened 10 times, as if a miracle would appear between the lines. There was no miracle. No way. She had done everything right, worked 2 jobs, skipped meals, even sold her winter coat. But tonight, there was nothing left. Not even pride. She stared at her phone for a long time. The name Ryan still sat in her contacts, the man who had vanished the second she told him she was pregnant. The man who once said, "If it's really mine, prove it." Her thumb hovered, her chest tightened. She didn't want him to know she was struggling. She didn't want anyone to know. But Noah, he needed her, and she was failing him. So she typed, "Ryan, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I have no one else. I need $50, 0 cents, just to buy milk. Please, I'll pay you back. I just started working at Walker Enterprises. I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for your son." She stared at the message, tried to hold her breath, then hit send. And in the space of 3 seconds, everything changed. Because when she looked at the screen again, her body went cold. It wasn't sent to Ryan, it was sent to someone else. A stranger. And not just any stranger. It was a number she didn't recognize. She froze. And then, 2 blue check marks. Read. Her heart slammed in her chest. No. She tried to delete it, tried to block the number, but it was too late. She wanted to scream, to disappear, to take it all back. Her baby was still crying. She whispered to herself, trembling, "In God, what have I done?" And then, her phone lit up. A reply. "I don't think this message was meant for me." Her heart dropped, her face flushed red. "I'm sorry," she typed back quickly. "Please ignore it, it was a mistake." But the stranger didn't ignore it. Another message appeared. "Do you really need formula for your baby?" Sarah swallowed hard. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Please," she replied. "Don't worry about it. It was a mistake. I'll figure it out." Then came a third message, direct, unmistakable. "Send me your address. I'm bringing the formula myself." Who was this man, and why did his voice feel more steady than anyone she'd ever known? Chapter 1. The text that wasn't meant for him. She meant to text the man who abandoned her. Instead, she reached the man who could change everything. The hallway was silent, except for the distant hum of a refrigerator and the muffled cries of a baby that had grown too tired to scream. Sarah sat on the threadbare carpet of her tiny living room, clutching her phone like it could break or save her in the same breath. She watched the little body in the makeshift crib, just a laundry basket with a soft towel, and saw how Noah's fists twitched every time he cried. There was a kind of pain that made your chest feel hollow. And tonight she lived inside that hollow place. She whispered to herself, not a prayer, just something. "It's gonna be okay, baby. Mommy's gonna figure this out." But even she didn't believe it anymore. The moment she sent that message, the one she meant for Ryan, her stomach flipped. It wasn't until the reply came that she knew something was wrong. "I don't think this message was meant for me." That voice, calm, cold. She stared at the screen, mortified. Then her mind raced. Who did she just message? Her contacts didn't include the number. There was no photo, just a +1 with no name. And worse, they had read it. "Please ignore it," she had typed back in a panic. "Wrong number. I'm sorry." But then, a pause, a longer one, and another message appeared. Do you really need formula for your baby? She nearly dropped the phone. Her pulse beat like thunder in her throat. Was he mocking her? She glanced at Noah, who had gone quiet, his cries now soft, almost broken, as if his body was too tired to ask any more. Something cracked in her. She typed back, "It's okay, I'll manage. I'm sorry for bothering you. Please ignore this." The response came so fast it felt like he had been waiting for her to say that. "Send me your address. I'll bring the formula now." She stood up too quickly and nearly lost her balance. Her knees shook. This had to be some kind of joke, some stranger pretending to care. Maybe a scam, maybe something worse. She typed again. "Really, it's not necessary. I'll figure something out." But the reply came again, colder this time. "Send me your address. Now." Her fingers trembled over the keyboard. Pride screamed at her not to do it. Fear begged her not to trust. But Noah was all that mattered. So she did. She sent the address. And then she waited. Not long after, she heard it. A car. Not just any car. The kind that didn't belong anywhere near this street. She rushed to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see. Black, sleek, quiet. A luxury car had parked right in front of her building. Her heart stopped. The man who stepped out was tall, clean-cut, wearing a suit that looked like it had its own security clearance. Behind him, 2 other men followed, bigger, bulkier, security. The tall man opened the trunk and pulled out 2 large bags. Formula, diapers, and toys? She stepped back from the window, stumbling into the coffee table. Was she dreaming? Hallucinating? Then the doorbell rang. She nearly didn't answer. She thought about pretending she wasn't home. Thought about hiding in the bathroom. But she couldn't. Not when she had asked. Not when Noah needed this. She wiped her face. Tucked the baby blanket over the couch to hide the stains, took a breath, then opened the door, and there he was. "You're," she said, barely a whisper. "Richard Walker," he replied, calm and direct. The name hit her like a slap. Walker, the logo on her uniform. The company she had been cleaning offices for just 2 weeks now. He was the CEO. She had texted the CEO, begged him for milk. She gripped the door frame to keep from falling. Without saying another word, Richard held out the bags. Milk, diapers, some clothes, a few toys. Thought it might help. His voice was low, even, strangely kind for a man who looked like he didn't know how to smile. She took the bag slowly, her voice caught in her throat. "Thank you, I didn't mean to." He raised one eyebrow. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." Inside, she motioned to the couch. Richard sat, his posture perfect, like he belonged in a boardroom, not her crumbling apartment. The room went quiet. He looked around, not judging, just observing. "Do you really work at Walker Enterprises?" he asked finally. She nodded, embarrassed. "Janitor, 2 weeks in." He stared at her, something unreadable in his eyes. What a coincidence. She laughed, but it came out more like a hiccup. Her cheeks burned. Noah whimpered again. Richard turned his head toward the crib. His face softened. "May I?" he asked. She blinked. "What?" "Told him." She hesitated, then nodded. He moved gently, picked Noah up with surprising ease. And there it was. The most powerful man she had ever met, rocking her baby like he'd done it all his life. Noah settled into him like he belonged there. "He's beautiful," Richard said quietly. "You're doing a good job." Sarah couldn't answer. Her throat felt tight. No one had said that to her, not once, not ever. He looked at her again. "Sarah, may I be direct?" She nodded. "I don't want to see you scrubbing floors at my company again." She froze. "I want to offer you a job, in my office, as my assistant." The silence. Her breath caught. "I'm not qualified. I don't belong in your office." He raised his hand, firm but calm. "You belong anywhere you choose to stand, especially where your son can see you rise." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. Noah slept peacefully in Richard's arms. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. She sent a message by mistake, but somehow it had landed in the only heart that still had room for hers. Chapter 2. The elevator to the top floor. He scrubbed his office floor on Tuesday. By Friday, she was riding the executive elevator with his name on the door. The next morning felt like a dream Sarah didn't trust. She had barely slept. Between feeding Noah and staring at her phone waiting for Richard to change his mind, she felt like she'd spent the night breathing through a paper bag. But at 6:03 a.m. her phone buzzed. 9 a.m. sharp, room 28, top floor. It was signed, R. Walker. No emojis, no softness, just a command. And somehow it made her feel safe. At 8:15, Sarah stood outside her front door, one hand gripping the stroller, the other tightening the strap of her worn-out purse. Noah was calm, that helped. Mrs. Margaret, the sweet neighbor who had once watched him while Sarah worked night shifts, waved from her door. "Go," she smiled. "We'll be just fine." Sarah whispered back, "Thank you, really." Then she walked. Not fast, but steady. With every step toward the subway, a voice in her head whispered, "You don't belong there. You'll embarrass yourself. You're just a cleaning lady." But Noah's face, it gave her just enough courage to keep walking. By 8:50, she was standing in front of the mirrored elevator doors at Walker Enterprises, 20 stories of steel, glass, and people who wore confidence like perfume. She could see her reflection, pale, plain, nervous. The receptionist glanced up, eyes pausing on Sarah's cheap black flats and slightly wrinkled blouse. "Name?" "Sarah Park. I have a meeting with Mr. Richard Walker." There was a pause. The receptionist's eyebrows lifted just slightly. A few quick keystrokes. Then a different tone. "Ow. Yes, elevator 3, top floor, room 28. Sarah nodded, murmuring a quiet thank you. She walked toward the elevator, feeling like every eye in the lobby was drilling into her back. When the doors closed behind her, she finally exhaled. As the elevator climbed, she watched her own reflection. Don't panic, smile, be professional, pretend you've done this before. Her hands shook anyway. The elevator chimed. Top floor. She stepped into a hallway that looked like it belonged in a movie. Glass walls, polished floors, a panoramic view of the city that stole her breath for a second. At the end of the corridor, room 28, President Richard Walker. She hesitated just long enough to consider turning around. But then she knocked. "Come in." A deep voice answered instantly. She pushed the door open, and there he was. Not behind a massive desk, but standing by the window, looking out at the skyline like he'd built it himself. He turned when she walked in. "Right on time," he said. "I like that." She gave a small nod, standing there awkwardly until he motioned toward the seat across from him. "Sit." He did. The office was silent except for the sound of a clock ticking. He studied her like a file he hadn't decided how to label yet. "Starting today, you're my personal executive assistant," he said flatly. "I don't know what that involves. You'll learn. But I've never—" He cut her off, gently but firmly. "I don't hire based on experience. I hire based on instinct. And mine says, you're not meant to mop floors." She stared at him, stunned. Her heart swelled and sank at the same time. "Why me?" "Because you didn't beg, you didn't flirt, you didn't even ask twice. You did what a real mother does. You sacrificed your pride." He leaned forward. "That tells me everything I need to know." The rest of the morning felt like an out-of-body experience. He handed her a tablet with his schedule, showed her his calendar, introduced her to a few people. Most were polite, some were surprised. But the whispers started before lunchtime. "Isn't that the janitor? She's sitting outside his door now. How does that happen?" She heard every word, felt every glance, but she kept her back straight, eyes forward, breathing slow. Because Noah's face was still in her mind, and Richard's words still echoed. "You're not meant to mop floors." By 2 p.m. she had made 3 mistakes, accidentally hung up on a vendor and nearly cried twice. But she also learned how to color code his calendar, found an error in a delivery date, and reminded him about a meeting he was about to miss. At 4:37 p.m., Richard walked out of his office, leaned against her desk, and said simply, "You're fast." She blinked. "I'm trying." He gave a small nod. "Keep going." By the time she left the building, the sky was pink. She walked slower now, not because she was tired, but because for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had somewhere to be. Like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible anymore. She entered through the back door of this company with a mop. Now she carried a key card with the CEO's name on it. Chapter 3. No one helped me but you. She didn't expect the CEO to notice her son had a fever. She never expected him to drive them to the hospital himself, or to hold her baby like he was already his. It happened on a Wednesday. Just past noon, while Sarah was typing up a revised itinerary for Richard's upcoming board meeting, her phone buzzed beside her keyboard. She picked it up, glancing quickly at the name on the screen. Mrs. Margaret. She smiled, expecting a casual update. But the moment she answered, the voice on the other end shattered any trace of peace. "Sarah, it's Noah. He's burning up, sweetheart. I think he has a fever." Her chest collapsed in a breath she couldn't finish. "Is he crying? Is he breathing okay? Is he..." "He's not crying much. That's what's scaring me." Sarah stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. She grabbed her purse, panic surging into every inch of her limbs. "I have to go," she murmured to no one in particular. But as she turned, her shoulder brushed hard against someone, Richard. He'd stepped out of his office, holding a folder, and now looked directly at her. She blinked at him, frozen. "Is something wrong?" Her mouth opened, but her voice cracked before it could land. "It's Noah, my son. He has a fever." It was all it took. Richard set the folder down on the edge of her desk, took one look at her pale face, and made a decision without hesitation. "Come on, I'll take you." They didn't speak in the elevator. They didn't need to. Sarah clutched her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She texted Mrs. Margaret to say they were on their way. Outside, his car was already waiting, sleek, black, warm. It smelled faintly like leather and cedarwood. Richard opened the passenger door himself. "Get in." She did. They drove in silence. But it wasn't empty. His jaw was tight, his hands controlled. But every red light made his foot tap anxiously. "He's going to be okay," he said, eyes forward. She nodded but didn't answer, because part of her didn't believe it. When they reached the apartment, Sarah bolted upstairs. Richard followed close behind. Mrs. Margaret opened the door before she could knock. "He's in the bedroom. I put a cool towel on his head." Sarah rushed past her, and there he was. Noah, curled up and pink-cheeked, a soft moan escaping his lips. Her heart split. "Hi, baby. Mommy's here, I'm here." She picked him up, feeling the heat roll off his skin like a furnace. And then something happened she didn't expect. Richard stepped forward, reached out, and gently cradled Noah in his arms. It was seamless, natural. He rocked him slowly, whispering something Sarah couldn't hear. Noah quieted in his arms almost instantly. Mrs. Margaret stood in the doorway stunned. "He must know him," she whispered. "Doesn't," Sarah replied. "Not really." But even she wasn't sure anymore. 15 minutes later, they were at a private hospital, the kind of place Sarah had only ever walked past, never through. "Richard, I can't afford this." "This isn't about what you can afford," he said, holding the door for her. "It's about Noah." The nurse led them quickly to pediatrics. Within 5 minutes, a doctor arrived. Calm, gentle, confident. "It's a common virus. Fever, discomfort, happens at this age," he said with a soft smile. "Plenty of rest, fluids, and some meds. He'll be just fine." Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She looked at Noah, now dozing in her arms. And then up at Richard, still standing there, still waiting. Still watching her like she was something more than just a mistake he'd responded to. On the drive home, she couldn't stop glancing at him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to do all that." "I know," he replied. Silence. "Most people wouldn't." "I'm not most people." She looked away, chewing the inside of her cheek. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at the road. The world outside reflected across the windshield like a film she wasn't part of. "Because no one helped me once," he said finally. She turned to him, surprised. "When I was younger," he continued, "someone I loved got sick, really sick, and I had all the money in the world, but none of it could fix what I didn't see coming." He stopped there, didn't explain. Didn't need to. She could hear what he didn't say. "I lost someone, and I never forgave myself." When they reached her building, he parked. "Do you want me to carry him up?" he asked. She shook her head. "You've already done too much." "I haven't even started." She turned sharply to look at him. But he didn't push. He just gave her a small nod. "Call me if he gets worse. You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not," he said. "But I still care." She opened the door and stepped out. He waited until she was at the top of the stairs. He waited until she disappeared inside. Only then did he drive away. Back inside, Sarah tucked Noah into bed, sat beside him, stroking his soft hair, and cried. Not because she was afraid, but because for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel alone anymore. He wasn't just her boss, he wasn't just rich. He was the first man who'd ever shown up and stayed. Chapter 4. The past doesn't knock, it breaks in. Greater than, she thought the danger was over. But sometimes, the people who hurt you the most don't stay gone. Greater than, they wait until you feel safe. Greater than then strike. The morning started like a quiet sigh. Sunlight spilled gently across the penthouse floor, painting soft lines over the crib where Noah still slept, arms sprawled, cheeks pink. Sarah had just poured her second cup of coffee when she heard it. Enough. Sharp. Too sharp. Her heart jumped. Richard was at work. Noah was finally resting. No deliveries were expected, and she hadn't told anyone where she was staying. She crept to the door, peering through the peephole. Her blood froze. It was him. Ryan, the man who vanished the moment she said, "I'm pregnant." Now, standing in the hallway like nothing had happened, like he hadn't sent those messages last week threatening to take her child. She didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then another knock, louder this time. "I know you're in there," Ryan called, voice muffled through the door. "Come on, Sarah, don't be dramatic." She backed away slowly, her hand trembling as it reached for her phone. She texted Richard. "He's here, Ryan, outside the door. I'm scared." No reply yet. "Look," Ryan's voice cut through again, this time colder. "We need to talk about our son. I have rights." She pressed her back to the wall, holding Noah's baby monitor like a weapon, useless as it was. Then, another message lit up her phone. From Ryan. "If you won't open the door, maybe I'll make some noise. Would be a shame if your new boss saw your mess." She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Was he going to ruin everything? Her new job. Her new life. Noah's safety. She turned and ran. Into the nursery, grabbed Noah, clutching him against her chest as she whispered, "It's okay, baby. I've got you. Mommy's got you." Then, another sound. But a knock. But a key. The handle jiggled. Her blood turned to ice. He had a key? How did he get a key? Just as the door cracked open, another voice sliced through the moment. "Step away from the door. Now." Richard. He appeared like a storm, coat still on, eyes sharp, one hand on Ryan's shoulder, pulling him back hard. Ryan stumbled, caught off guard. "What the hell, who are you?" he snapped. Richard didn't flinch. "I'm the man who will personally bury you in legal paperwork if you so much as breathe near her again." Ryan tried to puff up, cocky. "She's the mother of my kid. I have rights." Richard didn't blink. "And she has protection. Witnesses. And now security footage. One more step toward her and I will make sure you lose more than custody. You'll lose your freedom." The hallway fell silent. Then Ryan laughed, low and mean. "So this is what you've got now, Sarah? A rich boyfriend to save you? Cute. But money doesn't erase your past." "No," Sarah said softly from the nursery door, Noah in her arms. "But courage does." Richard stepped between them, firm. "You have 5 seconds to walk away, Ryan, or I call the police." Ryan held up his hands, mocking. Fine, I'm gone. For now. Then he turned to Sarah, face twisted. You can't hide behind him forever. And with that, he left. The door shut. The lock clicked. And Sarah collapsed to the floor, still holding Noah. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and hot. Richard didn't speak at first. He just knelt beside her, touched her back lightly, then said, I'll change all the locks. She nodded, shaking. I'll increase security. Another nod. But then he added, so gently it almost broke her. You don't have to be strong right now. You just have to let me stand with you. And that undid her. She sobbed into his chest. Noah squished between them, 3 hearts trembling as one. Later that night, after the locksmith had finished and Richard had called in a private security firm to station a guard in the lobby, he sat beside Sarah on the couch, silence thick between them. I didn't know he had a key, she said. I don't even know how. Richard was quiet. Did he ever come to your apartment? A few times, early on, before he ghosted me. He nodded slowly. We'll figure it out, and we'll keep you safe. Then his hand brushed hers. I meant what I said to him. He's not taking anything from you, not now, not ever. She looked at him, really looked. This man who had started out as a stranger with a cold voice and a warm heart hidden deep, now felt like everything safe and solid in a world that had once tried to crush her. You shouldn't have to do this, she whispered. You didn't ask for any of it. He turned to her, eyes steady. I didn't ask for it, but I choose it. I choose you. The words were simple, but they struck her like thunder, because no one had ever chosen her before. Not Ryan, not her parents, not the world. Until now. That night, she didn't sleep alone. She didn't feel like a charity case or a mistake. She felt like a woman who was finally protected. Not just from a man who threatened her, but from every version of her past that said she wasn't worthy of being loved. Greater than 30's emotional hook. Greater than the man who once left her with nothing, just tried to steal everything she finally built. But this time, she wasn't facing him alone. Greater than climactic moment. Greater than Ryan breaking in with a key and Richard physically stopping him, declaring his protection. Greater than thought-provoking question. Greater than what does it feel like when someone finally stands between you and the hurt you thought you'd have to face alone forever. But let me know when you're ready for Chapter 5. Chapter 5. You're not alone anymore. He didn't say much, but he showed up. And sometimes, the quietest men are the ones who never let you fall. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, the dim apartment light flickering overhead. Noah slept soundly beside her, cheek still flushed, lips twitching in tiny dreams. She had her phone in her lap, screen lit, unread messages staring back at her like ghosts. From Ryan. Didn't think I was serious? I've got friends now. I replied, try ignoring me again. Let's see what the judge says. Tick-tock, sweetheart, clock's ticking on custody. Her fingers curled into fists. Her heart felt like it was made of glass. Tight, fragile, already cracking under pressure. She deleted the messages, but she couldn't delete the fear. That night she lay awake listening to every sound. A car driving by, a door slamming, a dog barking. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Ryan's smirk. His words, help me out and I'll disappear. By morning she was pale, exhausted, unsteady, but she still went to work. Because that's what survivors do. She held her head up as she entered Walker Enterprises, even when every glance made her feel like she had no business walking past that marble lobby. By noon, she was typing out scheduling notes, barely able to focus, her vision blurring every few lines. Richard noticed. He didn't say a word. Not then. At 2:47 p.m., she received another message. From Ryan. You really think you're safe behind that desk? Wake up, Sarah. You're not untouchable. She dropped her phone. It clattered against the floor, loud enough to make Richard step out of his office. He picked it up without a word. His eyes scanned the screen for 1 second, and 2. Then he looked up at her, jaw clenched. Pack up. We're leaving. No arguments. Get your things. She obeyed. There was something in his voice. Not anger, not pity. Command. Minutes later, they were driving again. Not to her apartment. I'm at the hospital. Somewhere else. He stayed quiet for most of the ride, heart pounding, trying not to fall apart. Finally, she asked, "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." He parked outside a modern high-rise, glass and steel rising into the sky like something from another world. "This is my building." She blinked. "Why are we here?" "Because I don't want you sleeping in fear tonight." "Richard, no one needs peace, so do you." She shook her head, eyes brimming. "This is too much, I can't accept." He turned to her, firm. "You don't have to accept charity, just safety." He paused. "And me." The penthouse was nothing like she expected. Not cold or pretentious. It was warm, quiet, windows wide with a view of the lake, hardwood floors, a baby grand piano she wasn't sure he could even play. There were no photos on the walls, no mess, just space. Space to breathe. That night, he set up a guest room for her and Noah. He ordered soup and blankets. He didn't ask her to explain. Didn't press. Didn't pry. He just stayed close. Later, when Noah was finally asleep, Sarah stepped out into the living room. She found Richard on the balcony, overlooking the city. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie undone. The skyline glowed around him like fire. "I should leave," she said quietly. He didn't turn. Because this isn't my world." Now he turned. "You're wrong. I don't belong here. You belong with the people who care if you make it through the night." She said nothing, so he stepped closer. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. Not in this. Not in anything." Her breath hitched. She closed her eyes. Because no one had ever said that to her before. Not her mother. Not Ryan. Not any friend who slowly stopped answering her calls after Noah was born. But here was Richard, a man who had everything, saying exactly what she needed to hear. As they didn't touch. Not them. He just walked to the door and said, "Sleep well?" She nodded. "Thank you." But what she wanted to say was, "Please don't stop caring." She came to his world by mistake. But tonight, he made space for her on purpose. Chapter 6, The Hidden Numbers. She was just supposed to take notes. But she uncovered something even the CEO couldn't see. A betrayal buried in numbers, and a reason to believe in herself. The next morning, the sunlight poured through glass walls, golden and soft over the polished floors of Richard's penthouse. Sarah stood in the guest room, watching Noah sleep. His cheeks were warm, but the fever had passed. His tiny body had finally relaxed. She brushed a hand over his hair and whispered, "We're okay now, just for today, we're okay." For the first time in weeks, her voice didn't shake. Downstairs, Richard handed her a mug of coffee before she could ask. "Have a long day, 2 internal audits, 1 investor call, and a board meeting. Are you okay to be in the office?" She nodded. "I want to be." "Good," he said, "because I need someone I trust." The office felt different that day. Not because anything had changed on the surface. The floors still shined, the suits still whispered. But now, Sarah walked through them. Differently. She wasn't just the janitor who got promoted. She was the woman Richard Walker trusted. Late that afternoon, while organizing some financial reports for a quarterly review, Sarah noticed something. A line item. Tiny. Barely visible. $2,970.00. Labeled external consultation. Nothing unusual, except she had seen the same number last week. Same amount, different department. Curious, she checked again. $2,970.00. $2,970.00. $2,970.00. It appeared 5 times. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. "Richard?" she called gently from her desk. He looked up. "Can I ask something strange?" He walked over, hands in his pockets. She pointed at the monitor. "These numbers, They repeat the same dollar amount across 5 different departments, all within the same time period. He frowned, leaning closer. That's not possible. Those should have gone through separate systems. She turned the screen toward him. Ellie didn't. The room grew quiet. He sat beside her, pulling up additional records, cross-checking dates and invoices. What started as curiosity turned into something else, urgency. With each screen they opened, the picture grew clearer. Multiple small transactions, labeled under vague services, routed through secondary vendors, all approved internally, and all pointing to fraud. Someone's been siphoning money, Sarah whispered. Richard's face was unreadable, but his silence was loud. Do you know who has access to approve these? She asked. 3 people, he said slowly. Myself, the CFO, and William Carter. Her blood ran cold. William, his business partner, his right hand. You think it's him? Richard didn't answer. He just clenched his jaw. This isn't the first time I've felt something was off, he admitted, but I never had proof. Until now. He nodded, but there was no satisfaction in it. Only pain. Because this wasn't just about stolen money. It was about broken trust. They worked late into the night. Line after line, transfer after transfer. Sarah never stopped, never slowed. She asked questions, took notes, color-coded spreadsheets. And with every hour that passed, Richard's glances toward her grew softer. Not with pity, not with surprise, with respect. At 10:38 p.m., after hours of reviewing data, he sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. You know, he said, you've done more in one night than my analyst did in 3 weeks. She gave a tired smile. I just noticed. He looked at her, eyes sincere. You don't just notice, you see things others don't. He paused. Why didn't you ever finish school? She'd looked away. Pregnancy. Rent. Riot. A beat of silence. That was his gift to me, the end of everything I'd planned. Richard's voice dropped low. Don't ever let a man like that rewrite your story. She blinked back tears. I used to think I had nothing to offer. You have more than most of the people on my payroll. Then he added, quietly, including me. He stood up, walking over to the window. If William's behind this, it's bigger than numbers. He's been bleeding the company for years. Sarah stayed silent. So what do we do now? He turned, eyes sharp again. We keep going, quietly. No one can know, not yet. He walked over, gently picked up a folder she'd organized. You're not just my assistant anymore. Then what am I? The person I trust the most. That night, as she walked into her apartment with Noah in her arms, Sarah didn't feel afraid. Not because things were safe, but because now she wasn't fighting alone. She was fighting beside a man who believed in her. She found the truth buried in columns and codes, and in the process uncovered something even rarer, a man who saw her worth before she could see it herself. Chapter 7. The Setup. She exposed the truth. He trusted her completely, but the moment they got close to justice, someone tried to take everything away from him and her. 2 days after Sarah found the duplicate transactions, something shifted at Walker Enterprises. It was small at first, a wrong look from the CFO, a smile that didn't reach the eyes from the receptionist who used to be warm. Then a file Sarah saved mysteriously vanished. Then a printer jammed again on only her computer. Coincidence? Maybe. But her gut said otherwise. And Richard had always told her to trust her gut. They met after hours in the corner conference room. Lights dimmed, blinds drawn. Spreadsheets, emails, vendor codes. Sarah laid them out like a map, each thread connected by red tabs on the wall. It's not just William, she said. Someone helped him hide it. There are approvals coming from logins that don't make sense. Richard leaned over the table, eyes fixed on the digital trail. We're close, he muttered. Too close, Sarah whispered. You said only 3 people had access. He nodded. Which means someone is trying to frame me. She looked up. Why would William turn on you? Because if I go down, he gets control. The next morning it happened. Richard entered the building just before 9 a.m., perfectly on time, like always. But something was off. 3 board members stood waiting near the elevator. Suits stiff, eyes hard. "Mr. Walker, we need to speak with you privately." "About what?" "A serious issue has come to our attention regarding your financial conduct." Inside the boardroom, Sarah wasn't allowed in. She waited outside, heart thudding. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Richard walked out. Face pale, jaw locked. He didn't speak. Ish looked at her and shook his head. "Maybe think I did it." "What?" "They have forged transfers under my name. Millions. But we found the real ones. And now someone planted fakes." She grabbed his arm. "They're setting you up." He nodded once. "The boy want me out, effective immediately." The elevator ride down to the garage felt like the end of a movie she didn't choose to be in. Richard stood stiff beside her, staring at his reflection. Sarah's hand brushed against his, but he didn't move. Outside, they reached his car. He opened the passenger door for her, but didn't get in himself right away. "I need you to listen carefully." She turned. "You're not fired, and you're not going anywhere. But you stay in that building, quietly, carefully. You watch them. Keep digging. You were the one who found it all, Sarah, and I trust you, not them." Her voice trembled. "What if they come after me next? Then they'll have to go through me." He took her hand. "And Sarah," she looked up, "this isn't the end. It's the beginning." They drove in silence. Only now, it wasn't distance. It was strategy. Paddled. Yeah. Later that night, as Sarah tucked Noah into bed, her phone buzzed again. A message. From Ryan. "Amond, you thought you were smart. You thought you were safe. Now let's see how you survive when he's not there to protect you." Her heart stilled. Other message. "They'll take your job next, then your kid." She dropped the phone. She wanted to scream, run, disappear. But then she remembered Richard's voice. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. She stood up, opened her laptop, and got to work. They took him down in one meeting. But what they didn't realize was she was still standing. Chapter 8. The Trap. The man who stole millions thought he was untouchable. But the poor girl he once overlooked was the one who would take him down, with a baby in her arms and the CEO by her side. The days that followed were quiet. Richard's office was sealed, his name removed from the building directory. Rumors flew like dust in the sunlight. Everyone whispered, but no one looked Sarah in the eye. She moved through the halls like a ghost, smiling when necessary, listening when not. But behind that silence was a plan. Back in the penthouse, the lights stayed on late into the night. Laptops open, notebooks spread across the table. FBI agents coming and going quietly like shadows. Richard paced the room like a man who had nothing left to lose, except his name. Sarah sat beside him, Noah asleep in a bassinet nearby, organizing every single line of evidence. "This has to work," she whispered. "It will," Richard said. "We've got the proof. Now we just need the moment." The FBI's plan was precise. The fake merger, an international deal too good for William to resist. They crafted fake documents, false wire transfers, and backdated emails, all designed to draw him out. The bait was enormous. $14 million, 0 cents. Fictitious transfer to a non-existent shell company. William wouldn't walk away from that. And when he typed the final command, they'd be watching. The meeting was set for Friday morning. The boardroom, 10 a.m. Sarah arrived early, hair tied back, a plain blue blouse, Noah in her arms, quiet, alert. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't need to. The look in her eyes said enough. Today ends it. William entered the boardroom confident, as always. He greeted the board, flashed his trademark smile, and sat at the head of the table like he already owned it. Across the room, Sarah stood in the corner. Noah stirred slightly in her arms. Richard entered last, escorted by 2 FBI agents dressed as legal advisors. He took his seat, nodding once at Sarah. Their eyes met. "We're ready." The presentation began. Richard led with numbers, charts, growth projections. William played along, smiling, laughing at the right cues, pretending he wasn't watching that fake transaction blink on the tablet screen in front of him. Then it happened. In a quiet moment, William's fingers hovered over the approval button. One tap, two taps, sent. The room went still. For 3 long seconds, nothing moved. Then, the door burst open. "William Carter, you're under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and embezzlement." Gasps, chairs scraping. "What is this?" He stood, backing away. "This is a setup." But the evidence spoke louder. One agent opened a folder. Screenshots, financial trails, voice recordings. "We've been watching you for months." The woman you ignored, she connected every dot. William's eyes darted to Sarah. She didn't flinch. Lisa stood taller, Noah still in her arms, watching justice arrive. The board stared in disbelief. One man whispered, "That's the janitor, isn't it?" But another corrected him. "Not anymore." As the agents led William away, kicking and shouting, Sarah felt her knees shake. Richard reached for her hand. "You did this." "No," she whispered. "We did." Noah stirred again, blinking slowly. Richard looked down at him and smiled. And he helped. Outside, the sun had risen fully over the skyline. Warm light poured through the glass. Sarah stood on the building's front steps, holding Noah, her hand still clasped tightly in Richard's. And for the first time, since that wrong text, since the crying in the crib, she felt something rare and powerful. Pride. He was the CEO. She was the girl who once begged for formula. And together, they just took down the man who thought no one would notice. Chapter 9. The Confession. He lost his company, she lost her peace. But the moment he saw her holding their baby in the chaos, he realized he never wanted to fight another battle without her. That night, the city lights flickered like tiny promises in the dark. The news had already broken. William Carter, arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud, stinks. The inside source helped expose the truth, a secretary turned hero. Sarah didn't sleep. She sat on Richard's couch, feet curled beneath her, Noah asleep beside her again. The television played on mute, but the silence between them was louder than any headline. Richard stood near the window, jacket off, his dress shirt slightly wrinkled from the day. He didn't speak, just stared out at the night like he was trying to see something that didn't exist anymore. "You should rest," Sarah said softly. "So should you." But neither of them moved. Then he turned, eyes a little softer, shoulders a little heavier. "They reinstated me today." She blinked. "Already?" Once the board saw the files, the FBI statements, they had no choice. She smiled gently. "Good, you deserve that." He didn't answer. Just walked across the room, slowly, until he stood in front of her. She looked up, heartbeat quickening. Not because she was afraid, but because something in his eyes was different now. Raw, unhidden. "You saved my company," he said quietly. "You saved my life," she replied. A breath, a pause, a silence too full to hold. Then he reached for her hand, softly, carefully. "I've been trying not to say this." Her eyes welled, though she didn't know why. "Because I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to say it before you were ready, before I was ready." He sank to one knee, not to propose, but just to be level with her, with Noah. His voice trembled for the first time. "But I can't keep it in anymore. I love you." The words came like a dam breaking. Quiet, devastating, beautiful. "I love you, Sarah, and I love Noah." I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between that wrong text and today, I fell. She pressed a hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. I tried to stay distant. I told myself you were just an employee, just someone I was helping. But that was a lie. He looked at Noah, then back at her. "You're the strongest woman I know, and I don't want to imagine a life that doesn't start and end with the two of you." She couldn't speak. So she leaned forward, slowly, and kissed him. Not like a fairy tale, not like a movie, but like a woman who finally believed she could be loved back. The kiss deepened, gentle, aching, full of the things they'd both been too scared to say. When they finally pulled back, she kept her forehead against his. "I love you too, Richard." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You were the first man who didn't walk away from me, who didn't make me feel like I had to earn his love by suffering first." He pulled her close. "No more suffering, no more fear," she whispered. "Only us." The next morning brought one final wave of closure. The call came through at 8:32. The arrest was official. Ryan had been taken into custody. Blackmail, extortion, custody fraud. His threats were over. Sarah sat in Richard's car, the phone trembling in her hand. He reached for her. "You don't have to be scared anymore." She looked over at Noah, sleeping soundly. "Because we're not alone anymore." That night, as the city sparkled below them and Noah giggled in Richard's lap, Sarah leaned against the man who had once been a stranger behind a screen. He was her protector, her partner, her peace. He had fallen in love with her quietly. She had fallen in love with him unexpectedly, and together they had finally found the thing both thought they'd never deserve. Home, Chapter 10, The Wedding Under the Lights. She used to clean the floors of his company. Now she was walking down the aisle toward the man who once answered her message by mistake and became her forever. It was a quiet afternoon in the penthouse. Noah played on the rug, surrounded by scattered picture books and plush animals. Sarah stood near the window, watching the golden hour light spread over the skyline like a promise. Richard walked up behind her, holding a small black box in his hand. She didn't notice at first, not until he whispered, "You've already said yes in 100 unspoken ways. But I need to hear it once, just once, out loud." She turned slowly, eyes widening as he opened the box. Inside was a simple diamond ring, nothing flashy, nothing loud, just right. "I want you beside me in every meeting, every morning, every storm. Not just as my assistant, not just as Noah's mom, but as my wife, forever." She didn't even speak, just nodded, tears falling freely as she whispered, "Yes, God, yes." And when she said it, Noah clapped from the rug. The wedding came quickly, not because they rushed, but because they knew they didn't need more time to know. They had already lived a lifetime together in just a few months. The garden was strung with lights, soft, white, glowing like tiny stars. Rows of wooden chairs, a piano in the corner. Everything was simple, but everything felt sacred. The guest list was small. The entire Walker Enterprises team sat in attendance, including those who had once whispered behind monitors. Even they couldn't deny the truth anymore. This wasn't a Cinderella story. This was a real one. Mrs. Margaret wept openly in the front row. Noah walked down the aisle in a tiny gray suit, holding the ring box like a treasure. Laughter and tears followed him. And Sarah? She wore a soft satin dress, minimal makeup, her hair loosely tied back with a pearl comb. But it wasn't her dress that stunned everyone. It was her peace. The way she walked like she had nothing to prove anymore. Because she... Richard waited at the altar, eyes fixed on her. He never looked away. Not even for a second. When she reached him, he took her hands, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. That wrong number turned out to be the right one. The officiant began. Some love stories begin with roses and poetry, but this one began with desperation, with a message sent to the wrong person at the exact right moment. And somehow it saved them both. Richard's vows came first. He held Sarah's hands like he couldn't bear to let go. "I promise to protect you, to listen when you're silent and love you when you're loud. I promise to make this life safe for Noah and sacred for us. And above all, I promise to never forget that it was your courage that brought us here." Sarah's voice broke the moment she began, but she kept going. "I promise to choose you, even on the hard days, especially on the days I don't feel enough. I promise to never stop believing that a man like you could love a girl like me. When they kissed, it wasn't perfect. It was clumsy, tearful, full of laughter and trembling hands. But it was real, and that's all either of them ever wanted. The reception was filled with joy. Richard danced with Noah in his arms. Sarah watched them, barefoot, her cheeks aching from smiling. Later, under a canopy of lights, Richard led her into the garden. The two of them stood still, wrapped in silence, stars above and peace below. "I'll never get tired of this," he whispered. "Of what?" "Calling you mine." She leaned into his chest, eyes closed. "And I'll never stop remembering that I almost didn't send that text." He chuckled. "Best wrong number in history." She sent a message asking for $50, 0 cents. And in return, she was given a husband, a family, and a life she never dared to dream. If this story touched you, some love stories begin with roses, with candlelight, perfect words, and the kind of moments we dream of as little girls. But ours didn't. Ours began with a mistake, a wrong message, sent in fear, answered with kindness, and built quietly, painfully, into something unshakable. Sarah once stood at the edge of eviction, holding a crying baby in her arms. She asked for $50, 0 cents. Not because she didn't have pride, but because she had nothing left but love for her child. And Richard, he was the man who had everything: money, power, reputation, but not peace, not connection, not the kind of love that doesn't care what you own, only who you are at 2 a.m. when the world falls apart. And so, they didn't fall in love the way most do. They fought their way toward it, step by fragile step. They stood against betrayal. They dismantled lies. They protected a child. And somewhere in the middle of spreadsheets, night feeds, and whispered apologies, they became a family. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was an American story about resilience, about how sometimes your lowest moment becomes your turning point, and about how the people who are meant to find you will find you, even in the messiest way. So, if you're still waiting for your story, if you've been heartbroken, overlooked, left behind, I want you to remember this. Sometimes the right person shows up through the wrong door. Sometimes the mistake is the miracle. If this story touched you, if you saw yourself in Sarah or Richard or Noah, I hope you carry this with you. You are not alone. You are not broken. And you are never too far gone to be found by a love that sees your worth before your beauty, your heart before your history. Have you ever been saved by the wrong person at the right time? If this story moved you, the next one goes even deeper. See you there.